The hosts of Two Bored Apes are not registered investment advisors. The podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only. Nothing said on it should be construed as investment advice.
Two Bored Apes talking NFTs, DeFi, and some random stuff. Two Bored Apes talking NFTs, DeFi, and some random stuff.
Welcome to episode 51 of Two Bored Apes. I'm your host, Jamie. I'm here with my friend and my co-host, Roy, aka Zeneca. Zeneca, Roy, how are you?
I'm well. I think that's the first time you have definitely on the podcast called me Zeneca, maybe ever.
Yeah, I was thinking about it the other day, and I was like, people who might listen thinking they're getting Zeneca, they go, who is Roy? And turn it off immediately. You're certainly more well known as Zeneca than Roy.
That's true. Within the NFT space.
And this is an NFT podcast.
Is it? It's a random stuff, food. Yeah. Should we... I'm well. How are you, Jamie?
I'm good.
You're wearing a t-shirt that says Fight Evil. Good. Fight Evil, read books.
Yes.
Those are two good mottos to live by.
And I think the implication is that reading books will fight evil, which I don't know if it's that simple, but it's probably a start.
Kind of depends on the book. Like,
yeah. And the interpretation of the book.
Mm-hmm.
Should we talk about NFTs and stuff? Although actually, TornadoCash, this is more of a DeFi type situation.
Yeah.
Which we do. In the theme song, it is stated that we talk about DeFi. Today will be a little bit heavier than that.
It will indeed.
Let's get it started.
News of the week.
News of the week. Excuse me.
God.
I just started drinking.
I apologize on behalf of my co-host. I started drinking
soda recently, and it makes me very, very gassy and burpy.
Yeah. Just before we started recording, like in the 5-10 minutes we were chatting, he must have burped 100 times. And I said, are you just going to be burping throughout the whole podcast?
I'm going to be done soon.
As if we weren't giving our listeners enough reason to tune out.
There's another one coming soon.
Oh boy.
All right, news of the week. You wrote the thing about creator royalties. I'm more interested in TornadoCash. What do you want to talk about first?
Let's get into TornadoCash and then we'll get to royalties.
Okay. What is TornadoCash, Roy?
TornadoCash is a protocol platform where users who want to, I guess, hide their on-chain activity can effectively the way it works is it's a protocol that helps people be anonymous basically and their transactions be untraceable. The way it works is you'll go to TornadoCash and deposit money, and a bunch of other people will do that, and what they do is they like swirl it up basically and like, all right, so we've got 50 deposits from 50 different people, and now we're going to send out the money to whatever ETH address you have given them in advance, and that nobody knows where that money has come from. So let's say, there are legitimate and positive reasons for doing it, and then there's like nefarious and dodgy reasons for doing it. The most obvious, or one of the most common, is if someone is like a scammer, a rug puller, or like hacks some giant bridge and gets hundreds of millions of dollars. It's difficult to get that money and just like send it to an exchange because then they can trace it. And you want to basically hide the trail. And so you send it to TornadoCash. And then from there, I've gone all blurry in the video. And from there, you get to elect which ETH wallets, ideally like fresh wallets that have had no transaction history. And then all of a sudden, these wallets have the only incoming transaction to begin with is from TornadoCash, and then you can do whatever you want with it.
Right.
Is that basically it? Yeah.
Sort of. I was looking at settings trying to make you sound less loud in my ears. So I didn't hear tons of it, but it sounded pretty accurate. I don't know if you specifically mentioned that, the way that it's able to work is that many people use it. And so the funds, if just you sent money in and then the money went out, it would be quite obvious. But because a lot of people are sending money in, the funds get mixed. And so obviously it has huge potential for money laundering, but it also has legitimate privacy uses. There was that other burp.
Oh boy.
And so, that's obviously a situation where sort of the institutions that exist are going to be very opposed to the possibilities for money laundering, whereas these people that are trying to push for the crypto decentralization are going to try and sort of defend the privacy uses. Did you see what Vitalik said about his use for it, for instance?
I did not actually. What did he say?
Oh, really? So people are basically talking about why would people use it? What are the legitimate use cases? Somebody said someone might want to donate to a somewhat controversial charity or something like that without necessarily having that be traceable to them. And then Vitalik volunteered that he had, as a Russian citizen, donated to the Ukrainian cause in the war because he was, opposed to Russia's position in it. But it would be dangerous theoretically for him to do that, in a way that was not anonymous. And now he's, put that danger back onto himself just to strengthen this argument. But so that was just an instance that I saw. And so now there's an entity in the United States called OFAC. It's the Office of Foreign Assets Control. And basically they are in charge of determining who American citizens can't interact financially with. And it's basically, terrorist groups and countries that we find to be our geopolitical enemies, as well as, I believe, also some very specific individuals that are, related to these entities or whatever. But now they've added TornadoCash to this list, which is like a very different new thing. It's a piece of code that runs independently of anything or whatever. And just so that's a big deal. And there's lots of implications and people are talking about it. But the other thing that is maybe a bit more specific of it is things like, the biggest banks in the world do lots of money laundering. They get caught money laundering, but they just, there's a different, let me think of the words I'm trying to use here. A different reaction, I guess, from OFAC and from the United States government as to what they're going to do about it and what the consequences are. So that's sort of an interesting thing. Now, I did read a pretty level-headed response from somebody where they were basically talking about, so, if you have money that's totally legitimate, you call that white money, basically. And if you have money that is totally illicit, that's black money. And then once you start mixing those funds together, you have gray money. And these OFAC and other things probably like it in the European Union or whatever are very often in the business of looking at how gray money is and determining whether or not it crosses some sort of arbitrary or non-arbitrary threshold. And in that sense, it makes a lot of sense probably for TornadoCash to be gray enough that they're actually doing this sort of thing. Whereas, these banks that get caught laundering lots of money are not quite gray enough because maybe 90% of it is legitimate, whereas in TornadoCash, maybe it's 20. Those are all, make-believe numbers, but possibly realistic. So those are just sort of some interesting things that I saw about it. I can keep talking a little bit more if you don't have anything you want to jump in with.
That's an interesting point. I want to talk about like the enforceability of it, because I think that's really interesting and crazy to an extent, because to my understanding,
let me pause you for 1 second.
Yeah.
If you're a U.S. citizen, do not go to the TornadoCash website right now, because it seems like a loose interpretation of what they're saying is that is a crime at this point.
That's wild for starters.
So if you don't want, if you're trying to do civil disobedience or whatever, I guess you do it, but I still would rather not say that. But, just because we're talking about it, don't go, let me see what this is. Because it sounds like that's the same as, whatever. But go ahead. So
there's a very wide interpretation of sort of using TornadoCash, having interacted with it. And basically, OFAC has said any wallet that receives funding from TornadoCash is now flagged and, is on our list or watch list, ban list cannot US entities cannot legally transact or do business with a wallet that has received funding from TornadoCash. And someone made a real point of showing how ridiculous this was by basically finding a list of all of the most common high profile wallets in the space and sending 0.1 ETH to all of these wallets. They call this
from
dust.
From TornadoCash.
Now they call this dust, which generally is meant for 0.0001 ETH, cents, but obviously to this person, $100 is dust. And effectively, I can't remember how many addresses got hit, but it was dozens, if not hundreds. And shortly after, other US-based entities and protocols started refusing access to any wallet address that had received funding from TornadoCash. Now, the biggest example I can think of is Aave, which is a DeFi protocol. I'm pretty sure it was Aave. Their front end, so if you go to the website and connect with a wallet that had received funding from TornadoCash, it says, sorry, we can't offer, you can't use our protocol. And all of a sudden, all these people who, because of the way the blockchain works, anyone can send assets anywhere. They had never intentionally transacted with TornadoCash, but someone had just sent the money, and now all of a sudden that their wallet is blacklisted. And it's worth noting as well that it was just the front end of Aave that was blocked or banned. The website, you could still go to Etherscan and use the smart contracts, and
you could still directly with the contracts. USDC was another big one. So USDC has a function in it. In case listeners don't know, USDC is a big stable coin on Ethereum, and it has a function in it that basically is just a blacklist address function. And now all these addresses with USDC that got funds from TornadoCash are blacklisted. And so that USDC is basically worthless.
Is that accurate? All of the USDC that had is worthless, or?
I believe so.
That seems wild.
Because the addresses are blacklisted. You can't send it.
That is, it's just all scary and crazy. Yeah.
Right. And so now people are thinking about the implications of, mining blocks that contain transactions with TornadoCash. Is that going to be illegal, a felony, or whatever? All of these implications are very unknown. And we have various big actors talking about how they're thinking about fighting it in court, and that they believe it's an overreach. And, it's a huge step from the government. And people are, one of the other things I found interesting about it is that people are my interpretation, at least reading tweets and stuff, people are aghast at it. But I feel to me, the reason that most of us are in this space, or the reason that a lot of us are in this space, I guess, is we see the big potential to all this stuff. But it's all of it is literally a threat to the monopoly power over finances of world governments. And if you didn't believe that, then I could see why you are surprised that they're reacting in a big way to something like this. But if you fully comprehended that, and that's why you're here, I don't know why you'd be like, can you believe that they did this? I mean, maybe they're just sort of grandstanding, clutching their pearls. Now, obviously, I'm not happy that they did that. I would love for them to just fully embrace all this stuff, but that's totally unrealistic. So I don't know. I just found that to be a little bit weird or humorous to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's the next 5, 10, 15 years politically and are going to play out really interestingly. Yeah. And I've heard a lot of discussion about when Ethereum moves to proof of stake, the centralization aspect of that, because apparently, as it stands right now, of all the staked ETH in Lido and that kind of stuff,
Rocket Pool,
something like 60 to 70% of it is owned by US. It's done through US based companies like Coinbase. And it's scary then if the US government can be well, you're a US based entity, you can't approve transactions on the base layer of Ethereum. I've heard counter arguments to this as well, where Coinbase, for instance, all of their staked ETH is in like offshore entities that, for tax reasons, and maybe are less required to adhere to these things, and also that obviously they're going to fight that type of thing, and
right.
It just shows the potential of like there is a massive battle coming, even more so than this tornado thing. Yeah.
One of the things just about that, this kind of, I feel like, was talked about a good amount, like every time sort of China would bring up their Bitcoin FUD and stuff, is that, you know, theoretically, if global society decides that these blockchains have value or whatever, and this large entity, for instance, the United States, clamps down on people being able to do to run nodes from the United States, that just makes it more profitable for people everywhere else to spring up and run their own nodes. And so theoretically, that kind of thing is not such an issue if there's enough consensus globally that this is a network worth maintaining or whatever. Now, another thing I've been seeing is, you know, with the way that we've seen like Aave and USDC sort of fall in line with, or to some extent, I should say, I guess, fall in line with the United States' position on this TornadoCash stuff. And then perhaps, again, when we switch over to proof of stake, how easy is it for Ethereum to end up having censorship all the way down at the protocol layer, if that's what, for instance, the United States government demands? And how big of a fight is that? And how worthless is the whole thing if we agree to just start censoring stuff all the way down to the protocol layer? You know, then we're just Solana.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw a tweet by Sassel.eth, who I think was one of the original founders of Ethereum, or like he's part of the core development team. He's been around for ages, and I'm showing my ignorance here, but basically along the lines of, if we get to that point where the base layer is like censored, he would consider the Ethereum experiment a failure. And then it's like, what's next? And obviously, everyone who's pro crypto and understands it is going to be fighting against that level of censorship. Honestly, though, it's like a bull case for Bitcoin. All of this is
maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an interpretation, but I've also heard sort of the quick counter argument is that there's just so little happening on Bitcoin that it's not perceived as a threat to this. And the second that it started having the amount of activity that Ethereum has, they could just do the same exact type of thing there.
Yeah.
And that totally makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Another thing that's adjacent that I saw recently, the country of Argentina, or maybe specifically the government of Buenos Aires, their capital city, announced that they're planning on running Ethereum nodes in 2023 or 4. I don't know if you saw that. That was interesting to me. But sort of, just lends clarity or just some information to the sort of geopolitical landscape of it. If, the big entities that have the most to lose, like things like China and the United States, are going to try and restrict this stuff, perhaps the people that are sort of financially under the foot of those more powerful geopolitical players are more likely to want to embrace this sort of thing. And then when you have nation states actually on the side of crypto, it becomes closer to like acts of war, perhaps, when the United States and China want to start stamping on it. And it's all very interesting, and it'll continue to be interesting to see the what is accepted by the crypto community, what is accepted by the powerful geopolitical players, what level of embracing of all of it is going to happen. The simplest, this is boiling things down too much, but it always felt to me like if you just really had strong KYC centralized exchanges, that would be the short-term best sort of intermediate, where you're sort of allowing crypto to be crypto, but not allowing them to totally flaunt, your tax laws and your anti-money laundering laws and all of that good stuff. And theoretically, the way that crypto would just get around that then would be to be at the point where you don't need to go through the centralized exchanges because you don't end up needing the fiat because you can pay with crypto or whatever, all of that sort of thing. But that still feels very far away. But, it obviously, if that seemed like it was starting to happen, you would see why the governments would want to do more than just have the centralized exchanges following all these rules.
Yeah, it's fascinating to think about. Rachel just messaged me saying, "Do you want something from KFC?" Yes, I do.
I used to love their popcorn chicken so much.
I love their hot and spicy chicken wings. Yeah. I wonder if this is going to stay in the podcast. Probably is.
Yeah, of course.
A post-podcast big meal. So,
you should eat I want you to eat the wings for the last segment of the podcast.
I mean, it's going to take an hour for it to get delivered. So I was going to say it's going to be fascinating to see what happens because, if you if you can pay for anything in crypto, that would be the dream, right? Like you can go on Amazon and order things to your house and directly pay in ETH. You don't have to exchange to fiat and stuff. But then Amazon as a company, they're then now receiving all this crypto.
And they have your shipping address. They know who you are. If you're
right. Yeah. It sort of defeats the privacy purposes. Example. But from a financial perspective as well, then they are like, well, are we going to pay our taxes in crypto, or do we need to eventually? They need to convert to fiat. So at some point,
I remember reading one U.S. state was already accepting state taxes in Bitcoin, awesome. Like as of 2 years ago or something.
Yeah. There's also this whole concept and idea that I've heard people talk about now of like just a crypto nation state that is, like why not? And
like
just
a real one. I don't know, because I've heard of people talking about just the fact that it can be big enough and diversified enough that it has sort of the geopolitical weight and heft of one, but not like formally making a place for it. That I haven't heard so much about.
Yeah, I think it's the latter. And I think a lot of it's because Balaji's new book is called The Network State, How to Start a New Country. And I mean, I haven't read it, but I think it is an interesting, and it's probably going to take decades before something like this, because starting a country is not an easy thing. But imagine like the government it's all like DAOs all the way down or up and down, and it's just like it's a more transparent government organization where, it's run on blockchain technology, and I think it's really interesting to think about. It's powerful.
One other just sort of somewhat common refrain that I saw on Twitter. Oh my God, more KFC humor.
All caps. Wow, 30 wings bucket.
This is ridiculous. That I saw on Twitter, people coming up again, is that this is just sort of making more people bullish on Monero, which was sort of the original ultra privacy coin that I remember knowing about a long time ago, and knowing that its whole thing was like how ultra concealed or private or whatever all of the stuff is within the network. And I never researched how that worked or anything too much. But that was something that I've been seeing more people talk about recently. Yeah,
it's holding up.
You look like you're looking at a KFC menu right now.
No. I'm looking at the Monero price chart. It's at $170, which all-time high was around $470, and so in terms of altcoins, it's only down 70%, which is pretty decent. ETH is down 70% probably, or almost. Yeah. Anything else on TornadoCash?
There's probably a couple other sort of thoughts and implications or responses that. Go ahead.
I just thought of one more thing. It's the code or the GitHub repository was taken down as well.
Yes, and one of the devs was arrested as well.
Yes, yeah.
Those
are crazy.
So that's sort of a long-term sort of consequence or whatever, theoretically, of Microsoft acquiring GitHub that people kind of was it Microsoft that acquired it? I think it was,
I think it
right?
is, yeah.
Yeah. Not that necessarily an independent GitHub wouldn't have also complied in this sort of thing. But it also brings to fore the sort of need or, product market fit of a lot of these things that we're still using that are so censorable or shut downable by people that are sort of averse to crypto that, crypto is still using all of these things. Twitter is sort of another one, theoretically, where Discord, where so much of the community is there, so much of the communication, is there, but they are not native to the space and are theoretically beholden to the same sort of powers that crypto is fundamentally, I don't want to say fighting against, but a theoretical threat to and has friction with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little scary, but it's sort of just like reality shock, or like a lot of people forget sometimes that, hey, we are all citizens of countries that have laws, and companies are entities of countries that have laws. And at the end of the day, we can't, like, what we think should be right or like should be the way that we want it to be is not necessarily how it's going to be right now. And
yeah. The amount of people that on Twitter that you see just like arguing incessantly that as long as they don't turn their crypto into fiat, there's nothing taxable about it. It's like, that's just not how it works. I'm congratulations for wanting that, or weirdly thinking that should be the case, but that's just not how it is. And they're like, no. I didn't turn it into fiat. It's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
I think maybe another sort of reason for the reaction possibly is there's been a lot of, the position of maybe a lot of people in the space is that the governments are so clueless and far behind, but I'm sure they're spending a ton of time getting less far behind. And the fact that they're aware of TornadoCash enough to do something like this, shows some level of savvy, I would argue. Now, obviously, again, you could say it's an overreach and it's unprecedented and all of that stuff, but TornadoCash is also sort of an unprecedented thing for governments that are against money laundering to have to deal with, Yeah. That's the point of crypto, is that it allows these new things that, allow people to transact without going through the traditional layers that have all the sort of surveillance state type stuff attached to them.
Yeah. Yep. You
want to go to the other thing?
Let's go to creator royalties.
Yeah. So there's been a lot of discussion about creator royalties this past 2 weeks, maybe. Now you are more into the space. So do you know exactly what might have started this discussion?
Yes. So there's SudoSwap, the website that most people know for being able to swap one NFT for another, or, an NFT for ETH, OTC trades.
Two NFTs for one.
Yeah, sort of whatever you want in terms of swapping NFTs. They fairly recently, I think it was in July, came out with a new marketplace for trading NFTs, and it's kind of like the Uniswap for NFTs, where they allow anyone to create their own liquidity pool, adding NFTs and ETH and setting sort of a floor price, and also just like, I don't know 100% the exact mechanics, but you can set it up so that like if someone buys one, then the price increases by a little bit, so the floor goes up naturally, and people can sell into it, and it's really interesting and fascinating what they've done, and I think it's cool. But one thing that they did as well is say that the only fees are a 0.5% platform fee, and that's it. So there's no creative royalty fees charged for swapping or trading or buying or selling, which is obviously ruffling feathers, and they're gaining more and more users and volume. And it's sort of like why this entire conversation is coming around now. and a lot of people have been talking about it lately. Now, something that a lot of people aren't aware of, and I wasn't until say October last year, is that royalties are not enforceable on chain. Realistically, there's a couple of niche cases or ways you can do it, but they have other massive drawbacks. So the way that royalties work is that all the marketplaces basically agree to honor the royalties that the creator sets. So the creator says, hey, I've created something, there's going to be 10% royalty. And then OpenSea goes, okay, so if your item sells on here, we'll take all the money and then we'll send you 10%. And it's very manual. There are steps to make it a little more automated where you can now, in your contract, stipulate what the royalties are, and then OpenSea or LooksRare or Blur or whatever marketplace can read that directly and then automatically know what the royalties are, but they still have to, on their end, agree to honor it. So it's sort of like this dirty little secret of the space, I guess, where it's like, all right, everyone thinks the best part about NFTs, or one of the best parts, is artists, creators get royalties forever. And it's not really the case. It's for as long as the marketplaces agree to honor it, and also you can't. And
the participants, because
yes, that's the key point. Yeah.
For a long time, people have had the ability to transact peer-to-peer and get around the creator royalties as well.
Yeah.
So that's why they could choose to, or they could choose to go through the entities, or like what I've done sometimes. Like if I make a trade in the Art Blocks Discord, for instance, is you could get around the OpenSea fee by trading directly with this person, and then just go out of your own pocket, send the creator fee to the original artist of the project, that kind of thing. I've done that before.
Yeah.
But so again, this is a sort of, it's in the social contract, so to speak, rather than the smart contract, these creator royalties. For the most part. Now, like you were saying, there are ways that you can try to hard code it into the contract, but then you're going to have just a less liquid, harder to transact NFT, probably higher gas fees because the contract code is more. And there's always theoretically ways for people to try to get around it with wrappers and stuff like that.
Yeah. It gets complicated and messy. And I think Beeple summed it up the best, where he said, there is no way to force people to pay royalties. So the best thing you can do as a creator is to have your collectors want to pay royalties. And I think by and large, most of the space so it agrees and wants to pay royalties, I guess, to artists. And so it's a sliding scale where, a one-of-one artist, I think most people would agree and be all on board and say, hey, yes, we love this new paradigm of blockchain technology and NFTs and the creator economy, where a artist can receive royalties on their work, months, years, decades after creating it. Where it gets a little messier and where I think people are less inclined to want to pay is when you get these like 10K projects where there's so many of them, so many people are flipping and trading them. There's these vague roadmap promises. People aren't buying it necessarily to support the creator or because they love the art or to collect. The people are just buying it specifically to maximize their profit and make money. And when that happens, I think it starts to fall apart. And that's what we're seeing. SudoSwap, basically the only things being traded there are these larger collection-sized community PFP projects, membership projects. It's not, as far as I'm aware, there's no like pools created for one-on-one art or anything like that. And it's fundamentally harder to make a pool of one-on-one art, right? Yeah.
Than it is a bunch of floor pieces of one of these collections.
Yeah.
Just sort of by definition.
Exactly.
They're less fungible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just so prior to this, I guess a few weeks ago, I started thinking more about just like the business model as a project founder of, the sustainability of secondary market royalties. And I think that a lot of the projects out there, a lot of their ongoing revenue is from these secondary market royalties, especially if they're fairly successful. Like most projects aren't bringing money in from like merch is, insignificant and or zero for most projects. Most other projects don't have additional revenue streams. So if we are in this race to zero where creative royalties are going to disappear, I think a lot of projects are going to suffer and struggle. Now, there are a lot of people who want to pay royalties on these larger projects as well because, they understand, the team is working, that, building stuff and using that money to better the community. But it gets trickier when say someone is taking a massive loss on a project, and like if you buy something for 20 ETH, sell it for 7 ETH because the floor tanks, and then have to pay an additional 10% royalty on top of that. It's a lot of people are going to be inclined to want to not pay that royalty. Now again, like you would say that, well, when you bought the NFT, you sort of agreed, you knew you should know what the royalties at the time, and you agree to enter into that social contract. But yeah, as the collection size grows and the number of holders grow, I think the odds that there's like a small subset that will want to skirt royalties increases dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, I think also I would argue early on in a project, you have a lot more of the people that are just in it to try and flip it for money. And those types of people would theoretically want to skirt the royalties. And so I could see sort of newer, hotter projects. For instance, if this pseudo pool thing existed when Goblin Town was first going crazy, I could maybe have seen a lot of the action going on over there. Because people were just trying to kind of get in and out and flip and stuff like that for money, not because they loved goblins or whatever. It was too early to necessarily love the community and all of that stuff. So yeah, obviously I think there's a ton of people in the space who are in it to make money, purely to make money. Sort of like the way Kobe has been talking about how, NFTs are just altcoins or shit coins. With pictures.
Yeah.
The people that have that attitude don't give a fuck about creator royalties beyond the idea that they can make more people interested in these projects and make them more profitable for them to flip. So ultimately, those people I feel like are always going to want to go around the creator royalties. But, like you were saying, when you're talking about things like one-of-one art where people love the art and want to support the artist and are not planning on selling it, maybe are open to selling it a long time in the future, but are buying it not with the intentions of selling it soon for 1.5 times what they bought it for, or anything of that notion. Yeah. Those people are okay with it and like NFTs because of the way that they are theoretically able to help out creators in this sense, and will pay them.
Yeah. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch just over the next few weeks. I think we're going to see a lot of ideas and innovations for how projects can sort of combat these zero royalty marketplaces. One idea I've seen tossed around is you can bake into the contract the ability to sort of blacklist marketplaces. So you can say, well, this collection is not able to be traded on SudoSwap. And now obviously it's like a bit of a cat and mouse game where new marketplaces will pop up. But if it's just a function within the contract that you can add these marketplaces. Now, obviously there's decentralization issues there as well. But if you can do that, it's a lot easier for the project to blacklist than for a new marketplace to pop up and deploy contracts, and that gets expensive. And So,
just to be clear though, when you're saying like you wouldn't be able to blacklist OpenSea, you'd be able to blacklist the contract that OpenSea is using, which right now is like the Wyvern contract, for instance, for it, because the actual Ethereum, all the stuff happening on Ethereum, they don't know what website people are coming from.
Correct.
They just know about the smart contract interactions.
Correct.
So the front end would not be blocked. It would be whatever sort of back end contracts these marketplaces are using.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one way. I've seen people talk about if like a lot of these projects that are like utility based, they could bake in a mechanism where, or say, if an NFT is bought via a zero fee marketplace where the buyer doesn't honor the royalties, we just don't honor the utility. So, all right, you don't get Discord access with that NFT.
Right.
And potentially even just, you can just calculate what they owe and say, well, okay, you don't get a Discord access until you pay this amount on this NFT, stuff like that.
That's actually pretty simple too.
Yeah. Yeah. For artists, there's like, they can just maybe update the metadata and like turn the NFT into a blank image or something like that.
Yeah.
It's not
a picture of poop.
Yeah. It's not an appealing avenue because it sort of flies in the face of the whole true ownership and decentralization of some of this, but it is one way around. Other lines of thinking are like maybe it's fine to have no creative royalties for certain projects, and you can sort of get around the change in incentive structure where you withhold like 500 or 1,000 NFTs out of a 10K collection that you can then sell off at a future date if the collection's doing well, like Lava Labs did. But that has issues as well, because if the team is dumping NFTs at the floor, it might ruin sentiment. And there's a lot of options in the next, I think, few weeks.
It also doesn't give you, well, I don't know. The royalties kind of start right away if the collection has any sort of momentum. And in order to get that sort of secondary revenue right away with the model where you're withholding NFTs, you have to sort of kill that momentum by being the biggest seller of the collection.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be hard to sort of take off, I feel like, as a project while getting that secondary revenue coming in. But, theoretically, if you sort of price, but, again, this, my brain's going a mile a minute, but, if you are trying to do a sort of regular mint where you're taking in a bunch of money, you don't necessarily need those royalties right away to start having funds to do whatever with.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to do one of sort of these free mint things, which is also a popular format for, NFT creators and NFT buyers and holders and flippers and sellers and stuff. It's another one of the formats, and it's popular. But again, if you don't have those creator royalties for them, then you're just delaying even further their ability to take in any money to have funds to do stuff with.
Yeah, it's not ideal. Another idea is no royalties, but you just have a higher initial mint price. But then it's like, well, then there's that risk where the founders are just getting all this money up front, and you don't necessarily want to be doing that.
The incentives aren't necessarily as aligned. One sort of basic thing I've also seen is that it's like again, it's a social contract, not a smart contract. Let's just try and enforce the social contract. Let's just agree that these are a fucking good idea and that we're trying to do stuff that's better and less exploitive than what came before, and fucking pay the royalties.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that that's a battle that we can definitely win on the individual artist level, like one-on-one artists and smaller collections. But I'm not as optimistic for 10K collections.
But do you feel to some extent we're getting to the point, or will get to the point, or whatever, that the types of people that are in all of these projects for just the monetary things will move on from NFTs? Because it's getting harder and harder and harder, it seems, to just easily make money minting and flipping NFTs as supply goes through the roof, whereas demand, ticks up very gradually, that kind of thing. And, in sort of the bear markets, you are left with the people that actually care about this stuff, are actually in it for the art and the technology and that sort of thing. And so, I guess the response to that might just be that the second that you have momentum again and NFTs start becoming popular again or whatever, you just have a bunch of people that don't give a fuck about your culture. Again, they're still just in it to flip it.
Also, I think as it's getting tougher and tougher during a bear market, those people will be looking to like maximize their edge and find any way to eliminate fees. And so that
when it was easy to make the positive flips, they go, all right, well, you can have your taste too. But as it becomes tougher, that makes sense.
One other idea I've seen is the concept of, instead of having like the value or the utility be lifetime, for some of these membership NFTs, you have, all right, so you get it and you get access for a year, and you have to like re-up, or like you upgrade your NFT next year to keep that level of access, or you have the base NFT and then you do yearly memberships on top of that, or stuff like that, which and maybe like those who have the original
proof
get a
is
discount.
a 3-year thing, right?
Yeah, proof is 3 year. A lot of the alpha groups like 1 year, 18 month type things. A lot of the SaaS services. They're not lifetime, they're yearly or monthly. So definitely can work.
Yeah. That'll be kind of interesting, I would imagine, to watch the price of something like Proof, the price of the pass at, 1.5 years, and then 2 years, and 2.5 years, and 2.6 years, 2.7. It just seems like it might just be a weird, like, uninteresting, who's the buyer at 2.9 years?
Well, I mean, I think that there's ways to go, well, things are going so great, we're going to do another pass. There's 3 years after this, and anyone who has a current one can mint one of those for free. And then you just like...
But then is it not really, it doesn't seem like it's really a 3-year thing if you're doing that.
Yeah, no, but I think it's, I guess it gives them the optionality to, or maybe they mint it for 1 ETH again after 3 years. You have to pay to re-up, but it's like if the floor is 80 ETH and you're paying 1 ETH again in 3 years, then the company makes money and they don't have to rely on royalties. But yeah, anyway, interesting. It'll be really interesting to see what they decide to do.
Yeah. You have anything else to say on this? I feel like I've sort of exhausted my opinions for the most part on it.
Yeah. I mean, I could keep talking, but I wrote a massive newsletter post on it that we'll link to below if anyone wants to read more. But yeah, I think we're in this like wait and see phase now where it's just going to like see what plays out over the next few weeks, see what kind of volume SudoSwap gets and watch that. Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
This has been
News of the week.
Art blocks.
Blocks and generative art.
Generative art in general.
Now, Jamie is busy with a Rubik's Cube.
That's true.
Yeah. 4x4,
Go ahead.
which... All right.
Talk about art blocks.
Art blocks. It has been, I think, 2 weeks since our last non-Twitter Q&A episode. We have had one art blocks curated drop, Fake It Till You Make It. I really love it, but I think most people who know by Maya Man, most people know that I have a soft spot for generative art that have words or text, font, letters, anything like that. Seneca,
being the most famous
Parabellum.
example of it.
Yeah, letters to my future self, all of them. Love all of them. So that's why I love this drop. This drop has, I'm going to read the description. Fake It Till You Make It borrows from the bubbly language and pastel aesthetics of text-driven. Look at here is your Rubik's Cube.
I'm almost done with the orange side.
I'm sure our listeners really happy for you.
The YouTube people are loving this.
I don't think that they are.
How could they not be?
Because there's this crunching sound in everyone's ear that is very...
Well, here, I'm almost done with the orange. I'll put it down so there's no crunching sound.
Fake It Till You Make It borrows from the bubbly language and pastel aesthetics of text-driven Instagram graphics to scrutinize the promotion of wellness, self-care, and confidence on social media. So it's got like a pastel-colored background, and then there's text on top. Things like... your weight is perfectly bold. Sadness is not scary declining. Current mood, crying through business. Go where your destiny feels awesome. Small but hot. I'm feeling like a fierce girl winter. Deserve in your skincare. So, they make some sense, but they're not your traditional sentences usually.
Right.
And, but they have that girl boss, positivity vibe that you see a lot on Instagram, and that's
empty
what
platitudes.
Yeah, stuff like that. You are dancing the most passionate things to you daily. I fill my mind with magic.
They're like fortune cookies a little bit too.
Yeah. I'm shopping into my full screenshot.
You mentioned, by the way, letters to my future self. I just got my first one of those the other day.
Oh, nice.
That was kind of exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, they're great. Anyway, I love these. I think they're fun. They're whimsical. They are silly.
They're about as cheap as Art Blocks Curated comes right now, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Last I saw.
They minted out, I think, at like 0.3 maybe, which is certainly lower than any of the recent Art Blocks Curated drops. The collection size is a little on the higher side for recent drops at 700. And it's sitting at around a 0.2 floor now, which honestly, I struggle not to keep buying them at this point, but I probably have enough.
How many do you have?
It's a good question. Probably around 10-ish. What do you have any?
I have none right now, but I will definitely be getting one at some point because that's just too cheap for me not to get to add to my collection. I also picked up an Apparitions the other day, which is one of the curated projects that I did not have.
Nice. They're really, really great.
That's, I think, the biggest collection size, right? Of any curated. There's 2,000.
It's 2,000? I thought it was 1,500.
Or 15 maybe, yeah. Either way, I believe it is the bit. Oh, Squiggles, obviously.
And what are crypto blots at?
Let's find out the answers to all of this stuff.
All right.
But yeah, definitely, obviously, Squiggles is the biggest.
Apparitions 1,500, crypto blots 1921.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, crypto blots are a season 1 curated drop, and they're at like 0.3 ETH. So if you care about earliness, historical facts, or you think other people will, it's a pretty good entry point for season 1 curated drop.
Yeah, that's a lot of supply, though.
It is, yeah. Yeah, so I think I really think that there's like just a fun memeability about, and I don't love calling art blocks curated stuff memes, but I think it's
but this one is directly trying to sort of poke fun at memes that you would see on Instagram. Like that's the whole point of it, almost.
Yeah, it's I love them. I think they're fun.
I've been buying a ton of stuff on fxhash lately.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get to that soon. fxhash is awesome. But before we get to fxhash, there's another. So they haven't announced the next curated drop yet, but there's a factory drop coming up in one day, Wednesday the 17th. So probably after this goes out, it's 80s pop variety pack by Dan Cat, who did a whole bunch of factory drops last year. 70s pop series 1, series 2, summertime fun pack, Ghost. There was a Ghost one, and he had been talking about an 80s pop collection for ages, and now it's finally ready to come out. And it's interesting. It's 300, and it's based on 1988, which is my birth year, and there's 366 of them, so one for each day. And so I'm like obviously trying to get my birth date. Yeah, which hopefully
should be doable.
It should be doable unless someone front runs me and figures out what my birthday is and whatever.
You want to mint it or just acquire it eventually?
No, I just want to acquire it, but like
that should be easy.
Well, it should be, but what if someone just randomly mints it and it's Snowfro or someone who just doesn't sell?
You could DM Snowfro and say, "Hey."
Yeah, actually, he probably would.
Yeah, he would
trade that
for sure.
Yeah. But someone else who is a little less,
nice,
approachable. Yeah,
friendly to you.
Although I would say probably most art blocks collectors would be happy to trade. Yeah. All right, I'm going to my birthday. Although it could be some actually. I got blurry. Best case scenario is it goes to some art blocks whale. Worst case, it goes to some scumbag scalper who is like, all right, I'm not selling it for less than 10 ETH or something like that.
That would be funny to me. So I just went to Art Blocks and went to Factory Projects because of you saying this. Have you seen this new one called 3-Minute Meditations coming out?
I have not.
Kind of interesting. It hasn't started yet. So I guess we'll wait and see, but there's going to be 333 of them, but it sounds kind of interesting. And
I like that number.
Up both of our alleys. Oh, yeah, you would.
Huh. 3-Minute Meditations is a set of audio-visual generative art NFTs designed to provide the listener with a short meditative experience. That does sound amazing.
I'm intrigued. I wonder if you can listen to the first one right now. Is there a way to plug that sound into the... I bet there is.
Into the recording?
Yeah.
Can you hear that?
No.
Okay. I'm
There's a way to do
afraid
it.
to like share screen because Riverside is awful and Brian doesn't like when we do that.
All right, we won't do it, but we can link to the project
Yeah.
as well, just because it
We
sounds
will link
interesting
to
to
it.
us.
Yeah. There's a couple of art blocks drops that have a meditative quality. Eternal Pump by Dmitry Cherniak and Return by Aaron Penne. Yeah. Also of Apparitions.
Right.
Yeah.
I got my first one of those not that long ago too.
I heard that recently.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else art blocks related you want to chat about?
No.
So moving to fxhash, they just had their highest sale. Well, moving to
Nope.
Tezos. Yeah, so the highest sale on Tezos, which was not on fxhash, but it is by an fxhash artist, Zancan, occurred yesterday. Do you want to talk about it? You have an interesting story or backstory. With it?
Yeah. So, I mean, our listeners probably have some idea of this because I feel like we talked about Zancan when I started shopping his work a while ago. But, probably the second time around that I was looking at all of the stuff that he had and trying to buy some. And this was a point where garden monoliths were more expensive than I felt comfortable paying, but I was looking at everything else he had. And I saw he had this other collection called Lush Temples, which were, I don't want to say all one of ones, but there was some one of ones in it. And I think some additions, but don't quote me on that. For sure, some one of ones though. And I saw this one in particular that I thought was really beautiful. And I clicked on the profile of the person who owned it and I found their Twitter and I just sent them a DM. And now this was probably 3 months ago or something like that. And I was just like, hey, like, congratulations on snagging it. That piece is like amazing. And we sort of went back and forth talking about it. And he said at the time that his intention was not to sell it until he could get a price that would make it the highest selling piece of art on Tezos so far. And told me if I had 100,000 Tez, he would sell it to me then. And I said, I do not, but good luck on that. And like, it's an awesome piece. And then we just talked about generative art in general back and forth a while ago. And then sure enough, a couple of days ago, I think maybe exactly 1 day ago. So it would have been August 15th is when it happened. He sold it for 76,600 Tez, maybe. Is that right?
Sounds about right. In my head, it was 75,000.
Yeah. And so the previous record was X Copy's first Tezos piece, I believe.
I think a garden monolith recently sold for like 50,000 Tez. That.
Oh, okay. So maybe before that it was. But when I was talking to him, my recollection is what he said was that it was an X Copy. I can double check, but we don't need to. It's a beautiful piece. We can link to it. Zancan is great. And this particular piece is, I think, one of his strongest.
Oh, there was a garden monolith that sold for 75,000 Tez recently, a pink background.
Wow.
Yeah. It's
That's
beautiful.
crazy.
Yeah. That was 3 weeks ago. Yeah. They're beautiful.
They are. I like a lot of his work quite a bit.
Yeah.
And now you see, I feel like so many people, not copycats per se, but more and more people trying to recreate nature within generative art, which I'm all
for. Which is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always want more Zancan pieces. Maybe we can give some of those away as well. I have some.
Oh yeah, because he's got some edition pieces where there's tons and the price is not too high.
Yeah, and I think on this podcast, like a couple of months ago, we were talking about him and his work, and I went onto Object and found like his editions were like selling for like 7 Tez or something, and I was going, all right, this is crazy, and you can buy a Zancan. Yeah. So I went and bought like 100 of them over the course of a day, and now they're 30 Tez. But so he saw me doing that, and then he reached out and he said, I appreciate you collecting it. I'm going to send you another 10. Basically, because he had a bunch and he said that they'd be better in my hands than his. And so I've been giving them away, and I think it makes sense to give some to our podcast listeners. So
yeah,
maybe at the end when we do the whole what am I thinking thing, we'll figure out a way to.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Or I can do one side of this and they can guess how many seconds it'll take. No, you don't want to do that. Okay.
You mentioned you've been collecting a lot of art on Tez recently. Is there any...
fxhash specifically. So well, the first thing was that Rough Cuts project I really liked, and it didn't mint out. And then when there was like 30 left or something like that, maybe it was more like 15 or whatever, I just minted it out myself, basically, and bought some more on the secondary market. And then while I was there, I also found this project called One of These Days that I thought looked really interesting, and so I bought a bunch of those. And then while I was there, I saw this other collection called Celebration in Times of Measure that I thought looked really good. So I bought a bunch of those.
One of these days do look great.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me. And so I bought, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Looks like 40, about 55 pieces or something on fxhash quite recently between those three collections.
It's a beautiful thing about fxhash. It's just so much cheaper than ETH.
It's amazing.
Yeah. What was I going to say? I don't know. Totally forgot.
Perhaps you were going to propose what to move on to as our final segment of the day. Talk about Zen Academy, more fxhash art blocks, GM Studio.
Oh, Grails. It's not quite generative art, but it is art.
For some of it probably is.
Yeah, some of it probably is. In the first Grails, they had Tyler Hobbs. They had a few other generative artists. Have you been following it? Have you been looking at the Grails?
So for this season specifically of it, I saw one that seems quite obviously to be Grant Yoon's piece, and that was basically the extent of what I know about it. But I believe I saw on Twitter today that the auctions or picking of them or something started today. I don't remember exactly.
I'm looking at the website now. They are you can see
choosing which ones you get to mint or something.
Yeah. So they've revealed all 25. So maybe just to get some context, Grails is an art project by Proof where they gather a bunch of artists. In this case, they got 25. Each artist creates one piece of art, and then Proof members, as well as I think Moonbirds, who had a Grail trait, were airdropped a mint pass, and then you can burn or use your mint pass to claim one of these pieces of art from one of these artists per mint pass. And you don't know which art. Actually, we don't know the artists at all, let alone which artist did which piece. So you have to sort of collect based on the art and or do some sleuthing and discuss and try and figure out which artist. And it's a really interesting, fun.
I thought it was really interesting when I first heard about it, for sure. Very cool project.
And like you said, number 2 is very, very obviously Grant Yoon, or at least, I think it's actually listed on his website. It's the exact same piece. Really? So that's funny.
He has a very distinctive style, and that, there's no hiding that is his. Yeah.
A lot of the rest of it, though, is very difficult to know, or it's not as obvious. And I think that's one of the go on.
I was just going to say, like, specifically with ones we've seen before, and I think we've touched on this before, but Tyler Hobbs is one that he did for the first one called The Wall. It looked like a photograph. So people did not at all suspect that it was him, even though it was. And then Dmitry Cherniak also did it, and he literally did a photograph. So again, people did not at all suspect that was him.
Yeah, it's a lot of the artists really get into it and do fun things to try and hide their style, or they'll take something maybe from their really early days that So it's let's see, mint is open for another 6 days, 20 hours, so about a week left, and then there's the reveal, and it's sort of like just this interesting supply dynamic thing as well, because you get to look at and see what other people are minting and which ones are minted the most, and then maybe people think it's Tyler Hobbs, so they minted the most, thinking it'll be the most valuable, but then there's 150 of those minted, but then another artist might only have 7 minted, and that ends up being valuable because of how scarce it is. And
it's sort of a very fundamental and simplistic supply and demand type situation where, if you're thinking about the value of things, the ones that have the more demand automatically end up at, as long as the demand is coming from the initial minters, I should say, then the supply just goes up concurrently and sort of makes them not more valuable, because they're more desirable, because it lifts up the supply of them.
Yeah.
And then so people maybe are trying to pick ones that they don't think are as nice, maybe, but because they think they'll have a lower supply or whatever. It's just, it's sort of a interesting self-balancing mechanism to the monetary question.
Yeah. So we don't know who the artists are, but I believe that they said 2 of them are in like the top 5 or top 10 grossing NFT artists of all time. So that like it gives you some indication and some guesses. Obviously, like Xcopy people would be up there, but none of the pieces are in their style necessarily.
Yeah. Who else would be up there? Tyler Hobbs and Snowfro, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so.
Whoever did the twin,
maybe.
Justin Aversano. Yeah, that Justin Aversano. That's what I was thinking.
Twin Flames. Yeah. Pack. Although that seems less likely to be.
He's so unpopular on Twitter right now. Everyone hates him.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I think this is.
You remember we still probably have one listener always asking us to talk about Pack.
Yeah. Whenever we did Twitter Q&A, he would always send in a meme trying to get us to talk about it. Yeah. It was funny.
And now we're talking about him, and it's just not in the best delight. Yeah.
I think we're done with the generative art section of the podcast.
Yeah.
You want to just mention anything about Zen Academy, or just go run into the fun games?
I can briefly mention we've been hiring a few new people lately, and we're scaling the team up and have big plans. I guess I don't know what my last update was on the podcast. I used to say and think and feel, I'm happy with the small Discord community, just plugging along. I don't want to build an empire, just doing our own thing.
I think you did mention the last time that you're thinking about taking over the globe instead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
we're just having a fun project. Yeah. I think you already hinted at that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're working.
And
in
you're
that
still
direction.
thinking that.
Yeah, we're gonna take over the world. Going to take a while, and obviously we're thinking a lot about.
Yeah. Okay.
Going to take a while to take over the world.
It's not going to just be a blitzkrieg where you conquer the globe in a week. Okay.
Yeah. So I guess just stay tuned. I don't have anything massive to report right now, but hopefully next time.
Okay. You're talking about trying to give away some of these Zancans with the game. Are we going to figure that out after?
Let's give away 3 of them. Let's just say you have to mention the word that we end up deciding on in the YouTube comments again.
Okay, and then we'll just pick at random.
Yeah, we'll just randomly. We'll get all the comments and
we have not given away the NFTs we promised to last episode because we haven't figured out who are the winners, but we will do that.
That's still happening. Yeah. Cool. All right, what am I thinking?
Let's look at the same things on our desk and then try and think of something else.
Mm-hmm.
I have a word.
I got one.
3, 2, 1. Hiking.
Thunderstorm.
Hiking and thunderstorm. Okay, I have one.
Sure.
3, 2, 1. Nature.
There we go. Very good.
That was pretty impressive.
Yeah. I almost said outdoors, but...
Then where did thunderstorm come from?
I looked outside and there's gray skies.
I was thinking weather would have been the other option besides nature. Okay. So not the first, but 3 random people who say nature will get a Zancan from you. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe I should post on it.
Maybe.
Try and get one of these. I'm not going to do that. I will not do that.
You would be disqualified if you were.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'd be one of the blacklisted addresses that we were talking about in the TornadoCash thing. Okay, this is the end of the episode.
It is the end of the episode. Thanks for listening.
51 episodes, right?
That's crazy. I think
one more.
We've been doing this for over a year.
I was going to say one more, and it'll be a theoretically a year of one a week.
Yeah. I think we started in like July. Maybe. I think we started talking about it in June, but maybe we didn't actually launch.
We started recording like 6 weeks before we ever released one. We had to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go.
Some would say we're still figuring it out, but we got a few dead recordings that never made it.
Yeah.
You kept saying the N word, so we felt like we couldn't release them.
Me.
That's a lie. That was a funny lie by me.
Very funny.
I thought so. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, and see you next time.
I gotta go buy Thai chilies and green papayas.
I gotta eat a bucket of KFC, apparently.
That sounds fun. All right, bye.
Bye.
Two Bored Apes talking NFTs, DeFi, and some random stuff. Two Bored Apes talking NFTs.